saw what happened when we put that expansion tank on the discharge side of the pump and what problems that would cause. So now we've got it nailed down here that we want that expansion tank located on the suction side of the pump. So that's going to be here. And that's going to make things work a whole lot better for us. Keep us from pulling that suction pressure down into a potentially negative and causing all kinds of problems. So that leaves us just one valve that we want to, or one component that we want to look at, and that's the fill valve. And the ideal location for that actually turns out to be at the point of no pressure change. That's where we have a stable spot where we can count on the pressure. So the best scenario is to tie that guy in right here, and we'll often see that fill valve PRV right there. So that's the ideal spot. Now there's a couple little details in terms of connecting this expansion tank to the system that are worth thinking about, and one is a mistake that gets made, and the other is something that's going to help you out with maintenance in the future. So the first of those is sometimes you'll see a detail. This is your expansion tank. There's a drain at the bottom of these things, and sometimes you'll see a detail on plans that will tell you to pipe that drain in case something ever happens to the bladder and gets ruptured, as a way to be able to drain that tank out. We absolutely never recommend that you do this. This is a really bad idea. Number one, if somebody comes along and opens up that valve, you'll blow the air charge in your tank, and then you will rupture a bladder. The other reason is that these valves and this piping that you would use on the drain would not be bubble tight. It might be watertight, but it won't be bubble tight, and that means you'll lose the charge in your tank, and over time, as you lose that charge, you over-accept your tank and potentially rupture a bladder. So never, ever, ever do we want to pipe the drain of a bladder-style expansion tank. So never do that. The other is a more preventive maintenance item, and what we like to see here is an isolation valve between the tank and the system, and then another valve that will allow us to drain water out of the tank. So again, this is water on the bladder side. And the idea here is that for us to be able to check the pre-charge of a tank, we need to make sure there's no water in the tank or in the bladder. That's the only way for us to check the pre-charge. So to be able to do that, you have to isolate the tank from the system, and then you have to be able to open a valve and drain any water that might be in the bladder out. The only other alternative to this would be to disconnect the tank from the system, and that could result in having to drain the whole system. So these valves can really save you a lot of time as you're trying to troubleshoot an expansion tank and figure out if it has the proper pre-charge. So those are two details that you need to pay attention to when you're installing tanks.